She starred in the famous World War II era propaganda campaigns and eventually became one of the most famous icons in American history. But who exactly was Rosie the Riveter? And what's the real story behind her well-known image? To start with, it's not really about a riveter named Rosie. It's not even about one woman, but about millions. After the United States entered World War II in late 1941, government and industrial leaders called on American women to join the workforce in order to replace manpower lost when men enlisted as soldiers. Some 6 million would answer that call. Between 1940 and 1945, the female demographic of the national workforce increased from 27% to nearly 37%. Half of these working women took on tough jobs in defense industries. Rosie was first introduced to the public in a popular song called Rosie the Riveter, released in early 1943. The song was made famous by swing band leader James Kern K. Kaiser. Norman Rockwell had undoubtedly heard the song when he painted a female riveter on her lunch break for the Memorial Day issue of the Saturday Evening Post that year. Posed like the prophet Isaiah in Michelangelo's famous fresco on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, she rests her foot on a battered copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf. Her riveting gun rests on her lap, while her lunchbox clearly reads Rosie. Rockwell's model was a dental hygienist named Mary Keith, but was there a real Rosie the Riveter? After Rockwell's cover appeared on newsstands, the press lost no time in casting real-life Rosies. One of the most well-known was Rose Will Monroe, who worked as a riveter of B-24 and B-49 bomber airplanes at the Willow Run Aircraft Factory in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Monroe appeared in a promotional video for war bonds after a chance run-in with a Hollywood actor filming at the factory. But Rosie the Riveter was bigger than just one woman. She was a symbol of the wartime work and sacrifice of millions. Though Rockwell's painting was the original depiction of Rosie, she is most widely identified with a different image. In 1942, the year before the Rosie song was released, the Westinghouse Power Company commissioned J. Howard Miller to create a promotional poster that would boost morale among its employees. The now famous poster featured a bandana-clad woman flexing her arm muscles under the slogan, "We can do it." Due to copyright restrictions on Rockwell's work, Miller's "We Can Do It" poster was adopted by the feminist movement of the 1980s as a modern symbol of female empowerment. It is now the image most commonly associated with Rosie. From wartime propaganda to feminist symbol, Rosie has remained a riveting icon in American history.
Okay, so now that we have just watched this video, can anybody tell me if they remember about how many women entered the workforce? At 6 million, that's correct. So that is a huge amount of women going into this workforce. And it's also stated that about half of them went into the defense industry. So why do we think that the new Rosie the Riveter poster, the one up in the corner, would boost the morale of the workers? To like get them motivated to work. So when we look at her, she looks like she has a very determined face, right? She looks like she's strong, like she's ready to work. And the picture right next to her, the black and white one, is of the actual person that it was modeled after. So we have that as well. So take a few moments, look at these photos, kind of make some observations, and I'll ask you some questions about them. Anybody tell me something they observed about these photos, something they found interesting about them? Travis?
They all depict women in the workforce as like a very large part of it.
That is correct. So they all depict women in the workforce, he said, because we're focusing on working women, and how they were a large part of it. Women were involved in industries such as agriculture and business as well. So they really Fate. Not quite all men were sent to war, but a lot of them were sent to war. So without them in the workplace, we had to try to replace them, and we had new jobs because of the war. And with all these women actually going to work, it permanently changed American attitudes about women in the workplace. So when we think about the attitudes, think back to what did women traditionally do before World War II? What are our ideas on that? Maybe turn around and talk with the person behind you and think about some roles women traditionally would have had for a few moments. So, go ahead. If turn around and talk to people. Bailey, did you want to share what highlight? Yao, did you share with someone? You have about 10 seconds to wrap up your sharing. Okay, so now do we have any ideas about what women traditionally did before World War II? Colton.
They made food in the kitchen.
That is correct. They made food in the kitchen. What else did they do? Matt.
Took care of their kids and the house.
That is correct. So they usually stayed at home and did the domestic work. Very good. So when the women went back, when the women after World War II, we notice our chart down there. So women got out of the house, started going to work, but what happens between 1944 and 1946?
Or
High unemployment. Actually, no.
Right, next time can you raise your
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But yes, kind of high, well, not really unemployment, it's more the amount of women working dropped. Now they were either laid off, meaning their jobs were cut away from them because the war was no longer going on, or they returned home again. Like if their husbands came back from war, they would go back to take care of their children once again. And then we have a picture down in the corner, and it reads, "Good work, sister. We never figured you could do a man-sized job. America's women have met the test." Women, what do we think of this poster? What does it feel like about it? Kayla, you're saying thumbs down. Why? It is sexist. They didn't think women were strong enough to be in the workforce, but we proved them wrong. Remember the Rosie the Riveter photo? Really helped with that. Travis, if you could turn it all the way around in your chair, if it's working.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I was just like the comfort.
Okay. Now we have life on the home front with African Americans. So, African Americans weren't hired as much. We would hire the women, but we were very reluctant to hire them. So, one of the leaders of the union, Randolph actually, decided he was going to march on Washington. So before Martin Luther King even, he decided, I'm going to take my issues to Washington. We're not getting hired. We're just sitting here without jobs. We need jobs so we can support our families. So President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802, which is going to outlaw discrimination in employment. So you cannot discriminate based on race, creed, which is what you believe in or what religion you are, color, what color your skin is, or your national origin. So that also means immigrants who are coming in during this time. And the Fair Employment Practices Commission is set up in order to enforce this order. But do we think this order and commission were effective? You're saying no, Sebastian. Why are you saying no?
Well, there's some discrimination that just wasn't as public.
True, we still had that. Thinking along the historical line as well, the civil rights movement still hasn't happened. So if it had been effective, we might not have had the civil rights movement. We all good with this slide now? Okay. So now we have life on the home front with Mexican farm workers. Okay, so the Bracero program arranges for Mexican farm workers to help harvest crops in the Southwest. It's like a contract between them and our government to bring them up here to do our work in the fields. And this is going to make migrant workers important to the economy in the Southwest even today. We still have migrant workers who come up here to help harvest crops such as the oranges. So, with more than 200,000 workers who ended up coming, what if the Bracero program was not established? What do we think would have happened?
We wouldn't have had,
Travis?
we wouldn't have had 200,000 workers now.
And how would this have impacted?
It would have probably caused more Americans like African Americans, other minorities and such, to be hired instead of having migrant workers.
That's a true answer, but what are some other ideas we have on this? Tyler, I saw you almost raise your hand earlier. Can you build on what he said? Right, we might have had a food shortage because while we might have hired other groups, we also still didn't have enough people in this part of the country itself, too. So we had to bring them in. And this relates to today, that's why, again, we still bring other people in. And if we didn't have the workers come in, we also wouldn't be able to support our troops abroad. So,
Oh, this was during war time.
yes.
I did not know that. I thought it was not afterwards.
No, this is still during, the Bracero program happens during World War II.
Gotcha.
Yep. So, with daily life in the wartime, we have the Office of Price Administration and Civilian Supply and the Office of Economic Stabilization. And these are set up to regulate wages and certain prices. We want to make sure everybody is getting the same amount and we're not causing huge spikes in how much good costs, such as what happens with inflation. We also set up the War Labor Board and we try to prevent strikes. So why did we set up this board to prevent strikes? Why did we need to prevent strikes from happening?
Yeah.
Baby. That's right, that is why we have strikes. But now, why don't we want the strikes? Ashley? Perfect, right, because we want to keep up the patriotism, we don't want our soldiers running out. Adam, you had your hand up, did you have anything to add on it? Sebastian, did you have anything on it?
I was just gonna say that like we didn't have the workers as it is, so we didn't have many to spare on strikes.
That's correct too, so we didn't have enough workers, so if people went on strikes, we couldn't replace them with anybody else. So, besides all these other areas that are going to war, Hollywood itself even goes to war. So the movie industry itself is getting involved. The Office of War Information is set up specifically to help produce these movies and convey the war to the American public. So, when we look at these, we have The Führer's Face, so Disney itself even got involved in this. We have The Purple Heart, which depicts real life in the war. We have Casablanca, which is more of a romantic movie, and we'll leave out The Sound of Music for now. We'll get to that one in a little bit. So why do we think all of these movies were made?
sort of like victimize the Allies' powers and kind of put that the Germany and all the Axis powers were the bad guy, and that we needed to do everything in our power to kind of take them down or take them out.
That's a very perceptive answer, and I think you can really see that from where we're hitting Hitler in the face. Because we really want to win this war. We need to sell everybody on this war. The Sound of Music, quick show of hands, has anybody seen this movie? Because you guys have as well. Was it a good movie?
It's kind of hard to, I don't know, it's kind of boring.
Kind of boring? Maybe you're not a fan of musicals?
Yeah, no, my mom made me watch it.
Do you have something on it? So it is set during World War II. It is about a real family, actually. And what happened is the dad does not want to be part of the Nazis. Like, he was in their war during World War I. He was part of it, but he doesn't want to in World War II. But I would suggest checking it out. There's a lot that goes on. So now we have daily life in the wartime support, and we also have the sacrifices that come with this support. So, we are scrapping rubber, metal, and paper. Basically, we're pretty much recycling it. We're taking old tires, we're bringing them in to reuse them. We're bringing in metal. Children would even bring in their metal toys. That's how far this went to help support the war effort. And we're bringing in paper to do paperwork and to package all of the products in. Now, Americans of all ages were involved in this. Like I said, children brought in their own toys. And we had a lot of posters. So we have one down the bottom, American Needs Your Scrapped Rubber. They're really trying to show us how much rubber they need and bring the amount to the people. We have the Boy Scouts in the middle photo. They are conducting a metal drive. And so what this would do, people would bring in maybe their pots that don't hold water anymore, and they would throw them all in this big pile for them, and then they would melt them down and recycle them later at a factory. And then we have help put the lid on Hitler by saving your old metal and paper. So again, we are using this propaganda to support our war effort, and we continue to use Hitler in a lot of these posters. Now, can anybody tell me what a bond is? Maybe think of a savings bond.
Oh,
Yes. Tyler.
Isn't where you like pretty much are paying the government, but they'll pay you back with interest?
Perfect. So what's happening is you're paying the government. It is a type of debt almost for the American government. They're kind of loaning from us, the American people. And we're using it to finance our military operations and supplies. This is a huge thing during World War II. People are very patriotic about giving money to support our soldiers. So what would happen with this investment is people would pay about $18.75, and then in 10 years, you're supposed to receive $25. And children were even involved. They would pay a dime, so 10-cent stamps, and they could get all the way up to their bond of $18.75. But let's think about this now. If America wasn't on the winning side of the war, what would have happened to everybody's money? What do we think? Yes, baby? Right, and we would never get our money back. So you're kind of making a risk, but you were hoping that America could do this, and that's why we kept supporting them. And people would buy more than one bond, so they could get Zucchini. Zucchini would have been in there, so we can make that zucchini bread. Adam? Squash. Sebastian? Cauliflower. So, as we can see, we're going to cut it off there. I think we got a lot of vegetables that were raised during this time. So, and we also see how the comics were involved in this. They show, we have Robin and Batman and Superman all planting a victory garden. And then we also have this poster over here, which is talking about the preservation of food. What is one way we could preserve or keep this food from spoiling? Alex? Canning it. Can you explain what canning is? Right? And then you have to heat it up so then it vacuum seals and prevents the food from spoiling. Does anybody know anybody who does this? Maybe your aunt or your mom? Yeah? You guys enjoy it? Do you ever get like jelly from it?
Pickles.
Pickles? Pickles are a huge thing and they're a lot cheaper to buy, or you don't have to buy them then, which was the purpose of this as well. We needed to can as much food as we can, grow as much food, so we don't have to buy it later on. Now we have rationing. So, rationing is restricting the amount of an item an individual can have due to a limited supply. And the most common things we did were food, clothes, and gas. So like with food, you could only get so much butter per month. You ran out, you just ran out. You had to use the coupons over in the corner, and they varied by the years and what you were supposed to use them for. But instead of paying money, you would go to the cashier and you would hand them a coupon for like a loaf of bread. Once you used that coupon, and if you ran out during the month, you couldn't get any more bread. And we also noticed that black markets are existing. And what would happen is some people would charge more coupons than what they were actually worth. And then people would also use their coupons and get the goods, but then they would sell them to other people for higher prices, which we're not supposed to do. We're trying to use coupons so everybody gets the same amount and everybody can survive during the war. So when thinking about rationing in general, what do we